come talk to me before the meeting, if you want to go bring those things? Or have your committee bring them forth?
Well, I we had the last committee meeting and I want to bring in more, so, and I can, according to this agenda, bring them up at any time. So I'm just saying, where is it convenient to introduce them in here?
It's just nice to have plans, you know, with the background information and the committee
It's just
reviewing
going to be
it.
something that needs to be talked between the city council people. For consideration for next month.
All right, meeting, come to order. Pledge allegiance, please stand. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Cardwell? Here. Adams? Here. Daniels? Here. Durbin? Here. Eaton?
Here.
Steve? Ronnie? Yes. Next up is minutes of June 27th. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of June 27th.
I'll second. Any discussion? Yes.
I have just one comment. It would be really nice if we could get the meeting minutes out in a little more timely fashion, because if 2 months have gone by, it's really hard to go back and do a sanity check on them. And I know we were given some instructions a while back for our committees as far as, you know, doing the meeting minutes after the last meeting so that we would have to recall and we could vote on them. So that would be the one suggestion we have, that's a little more timely.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Battle? Yes. Daniel? Yes. Durbin?
No.
Eaton?
Yes,
Steve?
I'm sorry, I'm lost. What are we? We're just approving the minutes from June 27th.
Ronnie?
Yes. All right, thank you. Next up is mayor's comments. I don't have a lot to add. I don't recall if I mentioned it last time, but we do have a use of city land on land permit for the Wings and Wheels fly-in and cruise-in September. I believe it's over Labor Day weekend. And so if anybody has any comments or suggestions or anything, please get them to me. I'll probably be issuing the permit tomorrow. You know, I'd like to get it done this week, so sooner the better. Next up is public comments. We are going to have some public hearings on the budget and on the second reading of regulating short-term rentals and updating the planning board bylaws. So if you have any comments about that, you're welcome to wait until that period. You're also welcome to make those comments now. Please follow the rules up on the little placard there and limit it to 3 minutes. State your name and your address, and please approach the podium. Any comments? Okay, come on up.
What would have happened if there were any public comments?
We'd move on.
We'd ask online.
Steve Smith, 517 North Hauser. I would like to just make a couple comments, reference the letter that was included in the packet from Teresa on the airport and the plan. What I want to emphasize is that the city and the county are both signers of this application and of the master plan and for the continued use of the master plan. It is not just the airport board. It is the city. The city and the county have to be co-signees and have essentially say in the matter. Okay, that's important. I think that hasn't been really emphasized or known. So there's no single signee, in this case the county or the city, has full control. The term full control is part of that letter. I want to make a quick distinguish between the master plan and the airport layout plan. The master plan is the document that is being created by the engineering firm to give to the FAA on what the airport is going to be. It has to do with the map of the airport, environmental issues, drainage, grading, planning for compliance, airspace, even snow removal, Gets into aviation forecast, aviation financials, what the future may hold. And also the FAA requirements, for example, some requirements that are going to come with this master plan are the runway is going to be shortened, and the orientation, you've probably heard this, orientation is going to be adjusted a bit. The airport layout plan, which is a subset, is part of the master plan, is kind of the living document. That has to do with where are the hangars, where are the runways, where are the taxiways, what buildings might be built for what use, fixed space operators, fuel, things of that nature, right? So there's different things. We have a boundary dispute, obviously, so we need to designate what is the airport for this master plan to ensure compatible land use and protection of the airport for uses like its current use, as far as how much traffic, the aircraft, fire, flood, emergency services, that kind of thing. The current master plan, as it stands right now, the current phase that it's in, does have a draft map, and it is using at the moment the well-established airport historical boundaries, which date back to the early 1960s, and with the FAA's compliant FAA's was involved in that. Question.
It's 3 minutes.
They are?
Yeah.
Can I have 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Thank you. There were multiple presentations that have been made through the airport board in this process, because there is allusion in this letter that no one knew what was going on. The planning board or the city council didn't know what was going on. There were continuing updates in the airport board plans. The airport board is the body that actually contracted for the development of the master plan. So that was an obvious place to have updated reports. If the city council or the planning board want a specific presentation for their use, that's easily done. So keep that in mind. There were some bullet points, most of the bullet points in the letter about what's going to happen to the trails and that kind of thing. Those bullet points are essentially moot because the county can't do things unilaterally, obviously not the airport board. Whatever might be decided to do with the land in the airport area is going, the city and the county are going to have a say in that, because those things affect the airport layout plan.
Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? Anyone online have a comment about anything?
This is Jeff Wise. I have some comments to kind of piggyback on Steve Smith's. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Jeff Wise. I live in the Nightmare on Hauser Street, 516 North Hauser. Just kind of piggybacking on Steve's comments there, I'm just going to kind of read what I got here. So I read Teresa's letter, and it implies that the Joint Airport Board has been kind of holding out on the city with regard to the master plan, which couldn't be further from the truth. We contracted with the engineer back in 2021, and ever since he's been attending meetings, making presentations, telling us what his progress has been. The first time I recall the city showing up at an airport board meeting was back in November 2022. And that was where the first proposal for the new boundary that was laid out on a Xerox copy of a satellite image of the airport was presented. Prior to that, I don't recall any serious participation on part of anybody from the city to avail themselves of what was going on with the master plan. So I take, I question the idea that the city was not informed. It could have informed itself. It could have availed itself of what was going on at these public meetings, the joint airport board meetings. So, and I know, in fact, that I sat down with Jim Bushnell the week before the floods, and we discussed the issue of the water and the sewer and so forth. And at that point, I know I clearly stated that we were in the process of having a master plan created. So there's never been any sort of holding out on the city. I just want to make that clear. Okay. The other thing is, you know, there are statements in there to the effect of changing traffic patterns. These are the bullet points. Traffic patterns, both road and in the air. That's not the intent of the master plan. There just are a lot of red herrings in the letter, specifically some of those bullet points. She continues to write about growth in locations within the city for allowing growth for maybe senior housing facilities and so forth. I'm guessing that goes back to what had been proposed for some of the ground that's within the airport now, that the city has proposed to remove from what's in the confines of the current airport. To my way of thinking, some of the things that are being proposed are incompatible uses. Yes, we may still be able to get FAA funding if some of that ground is taken away, but I mean, I just keep thinking about the kid throwing the Frisbee over the back fence and it going across the runway when somebody's trying to land, or the baseball being hit across the fence, or any number of things. There's also the idea of dark skies and open space. And yet at the same time, it's argued that, well, maybe we should be planting some industrial buildings, some office buildings, some residential buildings, thereby creating less open space, thereby creating more light pollution. So I just wanted to get a couple of those.
You're talking about.
Go ahead.
Finish up. Go ahead and finish up.
That's basically what I wanted. I had those 2 points. I figured that'd take 3 minutes, but there are a lot of problems with the letter and what's being pointed out in the letter.
Thank you. Are there any more comments online or who are present here? All right. We'll end the public comment period. Next up is standing committees. First thing is public hearing on the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. It's a public hearing. Jen, do you want to give us a little introduction?
Yes. So the city participates in this process every year. We've had multiple meetings to look at drafts of the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget. And it is essential to pass this resolution and move it along to the state. I will say that the budget verification process in accordance with our procedures was completed by the full admin committee ahead of this meeting.
Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. If anybody has anything that they would like to state for the record, please approach the podium and the same rules apply. State your name and address and keep it to 3 minutes. Does anybody have any comments on the budget? Sandy.
Yeah, Sandy Conley, 307 Hagen Avenue South. The budget looked good. The only thing that I questioned was the fact that we've applied for a matching grant, but there isn't really money in the budget except for using reserves from all the departments. But we also talked about Rob Bastian's place, that FEMA will give them 75% of the appraised value, and then the city would have to cover the other 25%, less the volunteer hours that we all signed up for during the flood. The problem is that the house appraised for $2 million, so the city's part of that's $500,000, and that's not in the budget. So that's a little concerning for me that there's been some commitments made, but nothing in the budget.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any budgetary comments for this public hearing? Does anybody online have a comment about the budget? All right, last call for comments about the budget. All right, public hearing is closed. Would someone like to make a motion?
I will move to approve resolution 3633, a resolution of the city of Red Lodge, Montana, approving and adopting the final budget for fiscal year 2023-2024 as proposed by the city of Red Lodge mayor and approved by the Red Lodge City Council on August 22nd, 2023.
Now, did you just, do the resolution 3633? Is that proper? They both go at the same time? Okay. Thank you. And it was seconded by Chris. So, is there any discussion at the table?
I have
Terry?
some comments. So I have some real concerns with the process, first of all. We had a meeting back in July where we let the public ask questions. The agreement was that we'd have questions and they would be answered. I went up on the web. I didn't go up today, but I was up there on Sunday. I noticed that the presentation has not been updated based on that meeting. I've also noticed that the list of questions that the public had provided and that I had provided over a month ago have not been addressed or answered. And on the budget process flow chart that's in there that looks to be on page 16, it's up there like this was a process that we followed. And in neither of the years that I've been here, the last 2 years, have we followed this process. And what's concerning about that is there's a variety of checks and balances that happen with the council and the departments that haven't happened. And in fact, I can look at 6 steps here that are listed where the check and balances didn't happen with the city council. And so that concerns me. And and I would urge everybody in the public to look at that. One of the ones in particular is that council holds budget work sessions and reviews department requests and discusses the operational strategic plans. And I have not seen operational strategic plans. And I asked about them today in Public Works, and they don't have them. And I've asked people on city council that are in admin and finance, and apparently it's not their responsibility. So I think that having operational strategic plans are important for any business or department or whatever to have in place when making budgetary decisions. So the thing that there's no, the questions aren't completed. And like I say, my questions, since I have to vote on this, I asked over a month ago, they have not been addressed. The questions from the public have not been sufficiently addressed. And then I also brought up concerns at an earlier city council meeting about the audit, the results of that audit. And there were like 7 different things on there that were serious things that should be looked at and accounted for. And I asked to get some sort of an explanation as to what we did or what we plan to do to address those, and I've received nothing. So again, I just have some serious concerns about how we're currently managing our finances based on the budget and for the things I just mentioned. These concerns are echoed in the auditor's report, and to me, it's apparent we don't have the expertise within as an oversight committee, and I get that because the council and mayor are voluntary positions, so we don't have a lot of us don't, some people don't have that expertise. So while we're all in agreement that we need a city manager, I think we've all talked about that, that's going to take time, and we'll need to go to a vote by the people. So in the meantime, I want to be on record as strongly suggesting to the next administration, and I wanted to set in the word out right now, but I'm going to strongly suggest that we bring in a forensic accountant to examine our current staffing policies and procedures, and for them to provide some tangible recommendations going forward to ensure that our city remains viable. So we cannot, with a clear conscience, talk to our constituents about raising taxes until we get our finances in order. That's what I have to say.
Any more discussion?
I'll chime in and just say that it is the case that the presentation's not been updated yet. It's on my list. But I
I believe all of the questions that were presented to me, including the ones you sent me, are on there. They're not all
They're not answered though.
sufficiently answered to your.
No, my questions specifically are not answered on there. It says A with nothing after them.
So there definitely, some of your questions were answered. I would say the ones that, and I'm having trouble pulling up the slides right now because of the internet, but the ones that I recollect not being answered specifically have to do with requests for HR documents and things like that. So wanting job descriptions and things like that. Those specifically aren't answered. And I will say that we had talked about updating that page 16. So just to clarify for everybody, there's a process, there's like a flow chart where we talk about like from January till today when we you know, when a council approves the budget, here's the processes we're going to go through. And I actually think, I don't know why. So I actually helped, I helped draft, I helped another council member draft that chart many years ago. Not many, but a number of years ago. And you're right, like there were some things that we don't, like this updated operational strategic plans. It is the case that we need to update those, the departments need to update those. And we're working on that. So there are some parts of that process that weren't followed this year, and my intention is to update that particular slide to just say, in an ideal world, this is how it will go every single year, and this is what we strive for. That was not followed this year to a T. It was followed to the best of our ability, is what I would say. And in terms of questions, so questions that aren't answered, requesting a 3-year salary benefits perk history for each department head and non-union employee. That has not been answered. Are the costs for a solely city-run airport accounted for? That was answered. Why is the librarian for the city of Red Lodge the highest paid librarian in the state? I believe that was also answered. Here we go. Can you tell me how the city is addressing issue 007 of the audit? Updated written budget review process was provided to the state to ensure it was sufficient, and there is a reference to that actual document.
Would you like to know the ones that I
Sure,
have
yeah,
a question?
please.
So one of the questions I asked was, who generates the responses to the findings listed in the city audit report? And I said, who generated the responses for the 2022 audit report?
Yeah.
And the answer I got was the Admin and Finance Committee was not reformed until July 26, 2022. That's not an answer. That is information that could have been provided, okay?
All
The
right.
other thing I said is please address the list of findings that were raised in the 2021 audit report and why they have not been resolved as of the 2022 audit report.
Okay.
Okay, and then.
So 11 and 12, I'm following. Okay, go ahead.
Then there was also a question that was asked by one of our constituents by email, and I believe he also asked it during the little forum or whatever that you held, and it was, what were the contributing factors to the significant decline in the tax revenues in 2021? There were also questions regarding the fiscal year ending 2022 audit. Going through auditor findings, including material weaknesses that needed to be addressed, referring to segregation of duties, auditor prepared financial statements, mill levy calculations that were incorrect, electronic payment controls, equipment purchase not bid, credit card processing that was done incorrectly, and on the budget. And so has the city of Red Lodge responded to these weaknesses? If so, what action was taken and when was the corrective action? That wasn't even for me. And I also took notes during that meeting.
Okay.
And there are a series of things on here that also have not been, answered. There was a question about the responsibility of the city to maintain the streets on the West Bench, and about the documentation, the agreement was in place. Where is that accounted for in the budget? That's an important question that was not addressed. I could go on and on. So I'm not, trying to pick on anyone, but I'm just saying, I believe the whole purpose of having these meetings with the public and engaging the city council is to get questions answered in advance of voting on this.
Sure.
And I don't have those things answered. And so I have some serious concerns. I would urge anybody out in the audience to read the auditor report. You don't need to read every page. I can follow every page, but read the summaries. And that will just give you a snapshot of what kind of things we need to be addressing if we're going to be fiscally responsible. And I will just say it again, I have a really hard time as city council thinking that we're going to be able to go out there and ask for, say, well, we need more money because of whatever, when we can't, we have really outstanding questions that are not being addressed. And I do not buy this whole thing of like, well, we do what we can. A lot of times that's not good enough. And so maybe, again, maybe it's time for us to bring in some professionals so that we make sure that on something as important as tax dollars, that we're 100% accountable.
So, so these two questions in particular, we'll talk about. I think, I guess what I'm getting at, Terry, is that the issues of what was done to respond to audit findings is like, we have to provide stuff to the state that says we're doing this, and you can go to links and find that stuff. And if there's a question about, I mean, this budget doesn't ask for more tax money. This budget is within the mills that we were given.
But your presentation did.
Agreed. But I'm just saying, I think if there's follow-up to do regarding some audit questions that you have, but I don't think that that's relevant or should hold up voting today on this budget, because this budget falls within the mills we were awarded. And it's an ongoing process. Like,
there are questions, but Jen, here's my point. If you go back and you look at that report, there are problems that were identified the year before that weren't addressed, more than one. And all I'm saying is at some point, if these are important enough for the auditors to have on there and they have to do with fiscal responsibility of the city, it would be my expectation that the Finance and Admin Committee would address those concerns.
So I will tell you that the Finance and Admin Committee, the three of us, verified all of these budget numbers. We spent multiple hours completing that budget verification as a full committee in accordance with our current procedures and in accordance with the law. And I believe that was one of the big things that came up as, hey, you did this way in audit 2021 or 2022, you need to do it this way. We did that. And I think that we've done, the three of us agree that we have done the proper vetting of this budget to approve this tonight.
And I guess my point is, I just feel personally that after looking at the budget, looking at the process and attending that meeting, that we have not done our due diligence to get to the point where we're verifying numbers. That's my opinion. And I think anybody that has very much of a background, has a very good background in business would agree with that. And so I just putting it out there. I'm sure that there's other people on the council that don't agree, but I do hope people in the public take notice of this and do a little bit of investigation, and really next year at least focus on making sure that we have the council and we have our city answer to these questions before we have to vote on a budget. That's my point. Because now, again, like a lot of other things that we've been doing in this council, we wait to the last minute and then it's hurry up, we have to pass it. And I think if we did a little more planning in the beginning, we could have those questions answered and then still pass something in time. And I've heard this last year and I heard it this year, so.
Any more comments?
I would just like to say that, yes, I think that it would be nice for the budget to have that plan for each department on future spending requests, you know, what they're going to need ahead of time and why they need it. You know, especially our bigger departments. It'd be nice to have from the police department you know, the 2 new vehicles out of resort tax? Are you gonna need, you know, what's your plan moving forward on replacing the other vehicles in the future, so we know what to expect?
And as we discussed this
Right.
morning, that's in the works.
I
It's been
know.
scheduled for
Let me-
October.
Right. Let me just finish though, and I agree with that. I'm just saying that I think that having that strategic plan will help moving forward, I guess, is all that I'm saying. You know, with all of our departments, to have that in place. And thank you. Yes, I realize that our admin and finance committee meeting this morning, you did say that that would be worked on and that we would have it by October.
The second time, this is the third time.
I know,
So,
but I still get to make my comment.
yes, just to be clear. Any more comments? All right, if there's no more comments, we'll take a vote. Roll call.
Battle? Yes.
Daniel?
No.
Durbin?
No.
Eaton?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes.
42.
Thank you. With nothing from public health and safety, we'll move on to land use and planning. There's a coal cart donation. Courtney, do you want to tell us a little bit about the coal cart donation?
Sure, we have Cecilia on Go2 online, who is available to also kind of give a brief overview from the Western Heritage Museum and the history of this coal cart and what they are proposing. Originally, they approached the Roosevelt Center, who reached out to me to see if the city would have any interest. Really, it's not my decision to make on whether or not we accept a donation of a coal cart. And so we talked about this a little bit in our meeting earlier today, but Cecilia, are you available to kind of talk a little bit more about this proposed donation?
Hello, can you guys hear me? Oh, my dog's barking and I'm,
Yep, we can hear you.
am I yelling? Okay. So we have some large items in our collection that, we can't utilize them, but they have some really good, some deep historic roots in our communities, just in Eastern Montana. And so we were trying to find fitting homes for them. We don't want to just have them be recycled or go, be destroyed. So we thought a mining community would be a good match. And we thought, Red Lodge would be pretty awesome. We do have some ties to the Roosevelt Center and the Carbon County Museum. But it's a large mining coal cart. So I don't think they have the space for it either. So a public park would be great. I mean, you guys could do whatever you wanted with it. It's from Forsyth, and it was given to the Western Heritage Center in 1987. And we used it once in an exhibit because it's just hard for us to get it up our stairs in our building. And so it's been sitting in storage ever since then. But it is a cool piece. It's from Forsyth. I don't know the exact year. I don't have a lot of information on it. But we would love to see it utilized in a park. I mean, whatever you guys wanted to do with it, a really pretty display with some flowers or something, and then a plaque. I don't know, whatever you guys wanted to do with it, we would support you. But let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Courtney, how big is this coal cart? Is it 30 feet?
Ginormous.
20 feet?
So do you have specific dimensions on the coal cart?
No, I should have got those for you. I would guess that it's about 20, no, probably 4 feet. I can get those dimensions to you, but it's big. It's at least probably 4 feet by 3 feet. And we would obviously bring it to you guys because it's heavy and it is on wheels though, which is nice. So we have a trailer. We have a trailer and stuff, but I did send some pictures that aren't super flattering because it's kind of in the dark, but I think it would be a nice piece. But whatever you guys decide, we would obviously get it to you guys, but I can get exact measurements tomorrow.
Thank you.
Cecilia, I have a question. I'm looking at the pictures that you sent. Does the cart come with all of the things that are in it?
No, it does not. So that's so we have this storage unit that I've been cleaning out for like 7 years. And so some of this stuff has just been kind of a dumping ground before I got there. So I've been going through, and like some of that stuff in there is super heavy. So I can get that stuff moved out, and it is not part of the cold cart donation.
Lovely, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Courtney or Cecilia about the cold cart? Maybe we could,
When we talked about it in land use and planning today, Chris was going to connect with the Carbon County Historical Museum to get their input on it and to see if, they've been interested, or just to give us some feedback on it.
And Becky wasn't in today, but I will email her.
so what would be the next step? We can discuss it internally, maybe at a committee meeting, and decide if we want to.
Yeah.
accept the-
Yeah, we can discuss it more internally, kind of reach out to the museum. The chamber was mentioned as well as a possible.
They have one
Okay.
in their front yard
They
already.
don't want one. They don't
I
want
was gonna say, if you go and look at the one at the chamber, that would give you a good idea
Yeah.
of the display that they
Yeah.
have with it.
One of my, what I would love to see is our coal miners memorial area kind of revamped and given more intention as the space that it was intended to be. And I think this would be a cool feature there, but, that's the goal for that section for me in those parts. But I think if we talk about more internally and then have at some point a vote on whether or not we would like to accept this donation.
Great.
Hey, Courtney. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Courtney, it's Angela. Have you thought about the Arts Guild?
No, I haven't.
That might be something to think about.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you. Any other comments or
Think about
questions?
the roundabout.
Yeah, Brian Hanna had a great idea of putting it in the roundabout with some
I think it
flowers.
was too close to the chamber. You'd have a poker and then a poker. That's my opinion.
Might have found-
This is like literally right next to the roundabout.
Well, we'll keep talking about this.
Yes.
And if anyone from the public wants to contribute to that conversation, please let us know. All right, thanks, Cecilia.
Thank you guys so much for considering, and let me know if you have any questions or how I can help.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
All right, have a good night.
you too. Next up is ordinance 963, regulating short-term rentals within city limits. And Jen, you want to give us a little introduction on that?
Sure. So it's been in front of us a number of times, the second reading. And I believe it is a proactive way to try to mitigate for some of, to try to protect our community and also allow for growth of short-term rentals while not allowing overgrowth. So it has been amended a couple of times. This is the second reading. And really, we've talked a lot about it, so I don't think I really.
All right, so with that, we'll open the public hearing. And if anybody would like to approach the podium and make a statement, same rules apply. You're welcome to come forward. Sandy.
Sandy Conley, 307 Hagan Avenue South. Section 6 is the STR classifications, and I'm going to read this to you. This is your resolution. STR classifications will be established to determine exempt status and for data collection purposes. Right after you say it for data collection purposes, then you do restrictions. And you exempt the ones that are in the house. But then you give professional property managers 55% of the allowed permits, and only 45% to those others. I sent you all a statement that I got from the state of Montana, when I asked them, when a professional manager goes to class in order to get their license, what percentage is covered, what percentage of short-term rentals covered? And they said none. So why would a professional manager get preference over a homeowner? It doesn't make any sense. And this is supposed to be for data collection purposes, yet you immediately turn down and you do restrictions. So it's not for data collection purposes, it's for restrictions. And so I just think that the whole idea of classifications is wrong. If it's data collection, then that would be the end of that whole section 6. And there'd be no restrictions or preference, arbitrary preference for a property manager who's had 0 training in short-term rental management. So that's something you need to consider. Why would they be more professional than the guy who owns the property? I mean, there's already restrictions on the books for zoning, on responding issues and all of that. So this doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Please don't start the clock yet. I just want to make a comment that the recording, and I don't know if it's coming from that machine, but there's a feedback on the volume.
I know.
And I don't know where it's coming from, but I'm all in favor of recording. I don't have a problem with that.
It's not coming from.
Okay, there's a feedback, and I hear the repeat on what you guys are saying. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was a little distracting. So,
Can you limit that problem so that it doesn't distract people?
It's not coming from my recording.
it could be, I don't know. I just wanted to mention it because it was, like when Terry was speaking, I could hear the repeat. Hey, you're lucky. I could hear you twice.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Jen Kath, 8 North Plus. So as far as just because Sandy brought up education, and I am not surprised that the state of Montana gave that answer, but I can assure you, having been through CE credits every year for many, many years, that course has evolved, and our most recent business partner that's gone through the course and the licensing, they have incorporated short-term rental education. So there is education, albeit small compared to long-term managers. Just I'm not sure if I sit in favor or against the classification, but I can say as a student and a CE student every year, the teachings that take place regarding the state licensing are including more and more about vacation rentals, and that is what I have experienced. As far as the ordinance goes, the good neighbor policy, I just wanted to mention on that because you can see I'm in my bear trash picking up outfit, which I've worn since very early this morning, and I carry a shovel and rubber gloves in my truck all the time. And there's a lot of hubbub on social media about bear trash. This morning we were called out to 2 locations. Our bins happen to be closed. Sometimes our bins are cracked open. We take responsibility, we clean it up. We cleaned up 2 bins this morning. It just so happened, and it's not the fault of the tenant necessarily, that those bins belong to long-term rentals. I just want to point out that this good neighbor policy, I believe, needs to extend community-wide. Today on social media, Airbnbs and Red Lodge short-term rentals got blamed for all the bear trash. That is simply not true. My neighbors, sometimes I wake up in the morning, they don't go to the alley, I go to the alley. I pick up my neighbor's trash because Carl can't, so I pick it up. But short-term rentals are not the only avenue. Bears do not attack dumpsters that are short-term rentals only. I want to point that out. Also, AAA will be good stewards of the ordinance, as I said before. And I just had this overview, like AAA's had a really solid summer. We haven't experienced a pandemic. We haven't experienced a fire. We haven't experienced a flood. And for all of that, we are very grateful. And it has been a solid summer, although we're trending back to like 2019 rates and booking windows. So we're not seeing what we saw post-pandemic. It's not the boom. The boom is over. And short-term rental owners are realizing that the climate is changing financially on what they earn on their short-term rentals. And I think that that needs to be absorbed by the council as we go forward with short-term rental discussion. But in our town, like this morning, I started off my day with dry needling at the hospital, PT, fantastic. The fact that we can do that here in town. And then last night I was at YDS, my dog doing agility. Red Lodge has so much to offer. And I just love it. So on an up note, that's what I have to say.
Thank you. Any more comments from those present? Are there any comments online? Any comments online? All right, last call for comments, online or present, physically present. All right, public hearing is closed. Any discussion at the table?
I'll go last.
Carrie?
You go first. Well, do we need to move to approve it first?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
So I'll move to approve ordinance number 963, an ordinance of the city of Red Lodge, Montana to regulate short-term rentals within city limits.
I'll second. Thank you. Terry, go ahead.
So I'm not going to say, as we've gone through so many iterations of this ordinance, which I think in itself kind of shows that it's got some issues. It's had issues along the way. I'm going to go back to what I said every time I've had an opportunity. This committee had time to do a survey. They did a survey. They talked to the people of Red Lodge, and it was overwhelming that there wasn't a problem now. They went out and they looked at the data. The data shows that it's above 22% short-term rentals to when it's an issue. For a city, we're down around 10 the last time I checked. So I think it goes back to we're trying to solve a problem that we don't even have. And I just don't understand why we keep going down that road. And I would also say with the number of changes that this has had, I've talked to a couple different people in the legal, that are legally savvy on this, and they say that we are opening ourselves up to litigation. And so I'm saying, why do we want to open that can of worms? Honestly, I believe right now that this is not a good piece of legislation. And just to pass it because it's been shown, it's been put in front of us multiple times, is not a good reason to pass it. And I want to address a couple of things that we probably haven't talked about as much, but I know when this whole subject came up, was that this whole issue of restricting short-term rentals was not meant to be a solution to our workforce housing problem, and it's not. So I think people need to be aware that, you know, if we have less short-term rentals, that does not mean that they're going to become long-term rentals. And I will full disclosure, I don't have any short-term rentals, but I do have long-term rentals here in town. So I think people that have this hope that by passing this, that's going to happen, that isn't the case. And I will go back to hoping that this will go on record. Since I came on city council, and I'm going to be leaving city council with the same thought, and, you know, trying to talk to the next administration that coming up with a solution to workforce housing should be a priority for the city of Red Lodge to lead. Not the short-term rentals, but workforce housing. And why I won't be here next year, but I'll be glad as a citizen to help in those efforts. But I think we're just really missing the mark with this one.
Any further comments from anybody on council? Vincent?
It's been in front of us for quite a while. I've been going back and forth, just personal thoughts versus what constituents are saying. I think there is, like Terry said, a misconception with workforce housing versus short-term rentals, and they need to realize that they're not necessarily the same in capacity. I do understand, like, we don't have a problem now, and so this is just in place for when we meet the 20%, correct? So, so the cap, correct, like, okay. And then this is going to be readdressed again in 12 months, 10 months,
Each June.
each
annually.
June?
Thank you. Jody? Kelly, you good? Jen?
I guess I'll just say, I think I'm really, I'm proud of this process, and it did take a long time, and there were edits, but I think I think that's a testament to its sharpening and its refinement, and not to be viewed as a weak spot. Nothing in this document is arbitrary. I think there's primarily all of the sections, save 5 and 6, are ones that most everybody is very excited about to see. Particularly, we talked about the good neighbor policy and how that we can extend that to other parts of the community. It also adds to that, the survey that was conducted last year, again, we listed that it basically stated, we didn't have the question, do you think short-term rentals are a problem now? What we said is, do you think that there are health and safety issues with short-term rentals today? And the majority of the answers were somewhere in the middle of a hard no to not yet. And that is why this proposal allows for significant growth before a limit is reached in Section 5. And so I think that we did a good job as a community of listening to those survey results. I appreciate the robust discussion because this is a challenging topic and because people have different views. And I think that we as a committee have done a good job of representing those views and really hashing them out. And I look forward to seeing this in place, hopefully, and look forward to future councils grappling with it, each year to make sure that it still serves the needs of Red Lodge.
Thank you. Chris, do you have any comments?
What she said, I mean, that's well put.
Any further comments at the table or discussion?
I guess I would say that I wholeheartedly agree with what Jen said about, yes, there's been a lot of iterations and there's been a lot of edits made to this, but I think I see that as a very positive thing, because that means that this has been considered very carefully and has gotten input from not only council members, but the public, and through our committee meetings, talked a lot about it, had a lot of visitors at our committee meetings and got a lot of input, and I see that as a positive.
Thank you. Any further comments? Questions or discussion? All right, roll call.
Meadows?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Durbin?
No.
Eaton?
Yes.
Keith? Yes. Tony? Yes.
All right, thank you. Next up is ordinance number 803. It's a first amendment to update the planning board bylaws, which is the second reading of the public hearing. And I'll start the introduction by just letting you know that I had a concern that that the proposal was in violation of the charter. The charter is the document. We're a self-chartered city. There aren't a lot of self-chartered cities in the state. We are one, and that means that our charter rules are superior to state statutes. That being said, there are some exclusions to that. One of those exclusions is what we're talking about. And I contacted an attorney with MSU who speaks on municipal law, and he was kind enough to call me back, and he showed me the statute where planning and zoning issues are to follow state statutes. Now, there might be a gray area of who can appoint the board members, but in my opinion, I think it's cleaner to just leave it with the state statutes. So it was a good thing to know, but it's my intent to follow the law, and that would mean the charter. and what the Montana Constitution allows us to do. So, if anybody has any questions later on, I can answer them, but, would someone else like to follow that with an introduction to the issue before we open it for public comment? Would you like?
That might be me too.
Okay.
Okay, so I will introduce ordinance number 803, First Amendment. This is an ordinance by the city of Red Lodge reestablishing the city planning board membership and recognizing the board's additional duties as zoning commission and amended board bylaws. So basically, Montana Code Annotated has been updated since the last time the planning board amended their bylaws. And this new amendment, this ordinance 803 First Amendment squares the new Montana Code Annotated with the bylaws. So it updates the planning board bylaws to be in compliance with Montana Code.
Thank you. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. Public hearing is now open. If anybody in the audience would like to approach the podium and make any kind of comments about this issue, please do so.
Everybody's so shy.
Sandy?
Sandy Conley, 307 Hagan Avenue South. The problem is right now is that our charter says the mayor can appoint every board member of every single committee. So what if we end up with a mayor that has decided that the planning board should all be developers? There's absolutely nothing to stop that because the charter, which everyone agrees needs to be amended, but it's a timely thing. It's going to take a while to do. So the planning board did their appointments per the state. And part of that says that you have to be a landowner in order to be on the planning board, which makes sense. Because if you don't own land and you can make decisions on how other people can use their land, which is what zoning is all about, then it doesn't make any sense. So I think that the planning board should follow the state statute to the letter, the way it's appointed. If we follow our charter, which is out of date, it means it can be greatly abused. No landowners and whoever the mayor decides should be on that board. So it can be stacked, and that's not the whole point of planning.
Thank you, Sandy. Anyone else like to make a comment on this? Is there anyone online who'd like to make a comment on this? All right, last call for comments.
Jen Taft, 8 North Platte. So I know I can't ask questions, but so this ordinance would then say that the charter overrides the state, and no. Okay, thank you. So it means that the planning board appointees are then governed by state code? Okay, thank you.
Any further comments, online or in person? Last call for comments. All right, public hearing is now closed. Thank you. Discussion at the table. Terry, would you like to start?
Sure. I like this amendment. I do think we should be following Montana law because we all know that our charter needs updating.
Thank you. Cinta, do you have anything you'd like to add? Okay, Jody? Nope. Kelly? Nope. And I just would like to respond to the charter is like our constitution. So if it's, you know, it's up to the voters to change it. We do that every 10 years. We have the opportunity, and it can be changed by petition, and it can also be changed by ordinance. So it's all of our responsibilities to ensure that that is up to date if you find that it isn't. And if anybody else wants to talk about it as just a chatting thing, call me, because I've chatted about it a lot lately. So, Jen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No.
And Chris?
We did talk about this a lot today
Mm-hmm.
in our meeting, in both meetings. And so I just wanted to say thanks to the mayor for doing some more digging on that.
and kind of putting that to rest in my head for
Mhm.
me.
Myself also.
Thank you.
And I very much appreciate the resource of the people at MSU who study this sort of thing, because they're a very good, information point when we need, clarification on issues. So, is there any more discussion that anybody has? Because if there isn't, then we will, did we do a motion?
I don't think I'm.
Okay.
I thought we did, but
Well, let's make sure.
I moved to approve ordinance 803, First Amendment.
Okay. All right, thanks.
And then we had that discussion, it was great, and
Is there any further discussion? That's all. All right, roll call.
Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Eaton?
yes.
Keith? Yes. Ronnie?
Yes.
Thank you. Zoning amendment petition has been postponed till September 12th, and there's nothing on the agenda for public works. And then there's some correspondence. It's my understanding that Councilperson Durbin would like to make a request for
Yeah.
something from council.
I would, thank
Terry,
you.
What would you like to?
So I'd like to have two different topics be considered by council to be addressed at the next city council meeting. So let me go through those. So the first thing is concerning the airport. We had a lot of discussion today about the airport and some of the surrounding areas, which are walking past whatever park. So I'd like to move to add the following agenda item, have it added to the next city council meeting on September 12th. I'd like that, we're going to propose to have available a draft of the airport boundary ordinance for review by the city council. And also at that time, hopefully have available a draft of an interlocal agreement for review by the city council. So I'd like to get that voted on so that we can have that on the agenda for the next meeting.
If that's ready and available, then we will have.
Okay, it's going to be,
On.
Are these gonna be voted on, or?
no, it could be open for discussion.
Okay, because I won't be at the next meeting, so that's why.
I'll second that because time is of the essence.
Yeah.
We have an October 13th deadline. We'll need a meeting for discussion and then a meeting for, actually, it'll be an ordinance, so we'll need to vote. So I think we will need to have it, ready or not, we need to have the discussion at our next meeting.
Yeah, just to add to that, we have talked about what this is a very important issue. So we will make sure to have background information there as well and be prepared to have a good discussion on this.
All right, do you want to vote on it? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm happy to put it on there.
Yeah, I'd like to vote just so we get it on record that it's going to be added.
Okay, well, somebody needs to make a motion.
Oh, she did, and then she seconded it.
She
So,
seconded
roll
it.
call.
Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Eaton?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
And Terry, what was your second thing?
My second one is, I'd like to move to add a review of Resolution 3599, which is supporting the development of the observatory within Van Dyke Park. I'd like to have that added to the next city council meeting on September 12th. And here's the reasoning. The resolution allowed for a cement slab not to exceed 20 by 20 on that premise. And currently there are 2 cement pads that exceed that restriction. So I'd like to move that we take another look at this resolution 3599 and discuss any changes that we need, that are going to be needed to ensure that the observatory is in compliance with our resolution. And I'd also like to request that a copy of the signed MOU be provided to each of the city council members in advance.
I'll second.
The MOU is available online.
People were having problems finding it, so if someone could send a link, that would be great.
No problem. So it was, moved and seconded?
Yep.
Okay, roll call?
Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Eaton?
Yes.
Keith?
Sure. Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
Okay. And if there's correspondence that's in your packet and with no further things going on, then we will adjourn. Thank you.
zone.